steady hand. And Vietnam was a planned 10-year program in Vietnam to show the Russians that not only would we stop communism spreading through Asia, but we'd be ruthless, and it didn't matter if there was families involved or children involved. We'd wipe out indiscriminately and show them that that's the kind of resolve that we're taking, and that's the kind of position we're taking. President Kennedy thought that was appalling and was going to pull our advisors and our troops back out of Vietnam. He said he was going to be the least popular president in 1964 in U.S. history, but he was referring to the within his own government structure, not the American public.
Now, you were told this, or you saw this in the documents?
I have read documentation. I have listened to the Oval Office recordings where the president is talking directly to other individuals, and he's involved in these things. I've also spoken with Mr. Robert Bauch, who was the head of the Protective Research Section for the Secret Service in the White House, that worked very close with Bobby Kennedy after the assassination. Material that had come through Evelyn Lincoln. Some of those materials were obviously made for the American public, and some were private. But she was with President Kennedy every day, and there was no doubt that she was the most intimate, other than his brother, the intimate person that was with him on a daily basis, and was privy to a lot of this. And of course, she was very scared when this happened. She was terrified that Johnson had come into the Oval Office, and that she was, and rightfully so. So I mean, she took her instructions from Robert Kennedy on how to deal with this. Robert Kennedy, within 24 hours, went from the second most powerful person in the world, maybe even considered a co-presidency in his case, as Attorney General and so forth, to just a lame lawyer. They wouldn't even send a car to pick him up from work for work. So he was faced with the dilemma: how do I deal with this? The Russian side had notified me and told me, said, we thought he was going to enact another coup against the Johnson administration and take over. The FBI certainly was looking at that possibility. But to his credit, he said, no, I'm going to work within this structure. I'm not going to cause any more death, and I'm certainly not going to risk any more American lives over this, and I'm going to have to swallow this and pursue this to the end of the day. So he, to his credit, he was faced with an almost impossible situation, and tried to do what he could, sign agreements so that he would not testify at the Warren Commission, and he would not made agreements that he would not pursue this. He would accept the terms of the Warren Commission. He became a U.S. senator, but as the country became more divided and was falling apart over Vietnam, and thousands of our men were dying over there, he wanted desperately to get back to what his brother had put in place, and he said, no, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to run in 1968. That's where I was supposed to be, and I'm going to stand up and do what I was supposed to do. Of course, Johnson took the position that I'm not going to run against you. I'm not going to take the nomination to my party for the second term. And but Robert Kennedy made some errors in that, and made a speech that publicly said that he would open up these records when he became president of the United States. And of course, he didn't make that. So,
but you think the Russians believed that Robert Kennedy might assassinate Johnson?
Not assassinate directly, but enact a coup of taking power away from the administration in such a way where you're releasing information to them, showing that the Johnson administration was illegal.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and you were told this, or you determined this by reading the documents?
Again, it's hard to cover this in a short span of time, and I tend to run there's just so much information. But this came to us through many different channels. Through the Secret Service, the president, who were more aware of the facts than the President of the States would be. It was a very amazing statement from President Reagan. The truth of the matter is, President told the work he would commit to step on toe this. President Johnson said he would come to the information on each other. President Nixon, Johnson was very concerned about who came next and didn't want to make sure that his administration was considered an illegal administration. So they were all very concerned about what would be coming out about this. President Kennedy was an extremely brave individual, and he was looking at whether we were going to continue as a peaceful world or we were going to be not annihilated. He felt if there was an exchange that happened in any condition, that there was no winners. There'd be no winners. We'd all lose. So he took a very bold and firm stance on this, and and paid with it with his life.
So Johnson was aware of the coup, and he benefited from it. Was he one of the plotters?
Well, I don't want to give too much away out of the book of what's in the book, but Johnson was certainly aware that there was a position that was taken to push President Kennedy into a no-win situation, whether they had to through a false flag or not to make the American public get behind an invasion of Cuba. So not only was he aware of that, but President Kennedy was also aware of the dangerous position he was in and what he was dealing with. So it was a very high stakes game. It's a game, in my opinion, that we lost. It shouldn't have. It wouldn't have happened. And we lost 58,000 American lives in a situation to deter the resolve of the Russians. That was a substitute rather than going to war. And of course, as an American and listening to all of this and learning all of this, it's heart-wrenching.
Are you under any restrictions right now, national security type restrictions of what you can talk about?
I have not signed the Secrecies Act, and my agreements with the Justice Department go as far as no prosecution involved with what they are aware of that I know, and also the fact that I have Oval Office recordings that have been non-reviewed. But as far as that, that's as far as it goes. But I do have to be careful. I certainly don't want to harm any innocent parties that could be involved directly or indirectly, and I certainly want to take responsibility to not say anything that would harm the security or the interests of the United States. Most things under policy that we're going to really should have been an open forum for the American people.
And just to back up a little bit too, now when you testified under oath, you were given that immunity and you testified. Did the Department? I guess it's the Department of Justice that went after you, right?
That's correct. Yeah. And I should mention that the Department of Justice, as I understand it, so that the American people understand, they're not going to pursue anything in this case because they've been given full power on the Kennedy concern, so that it falls in the Justice Department's lap. But they're not going to pursue anything because there's no prosecutions at the end of the day. Without a prosecution, they're not interested in pursuing this. The only thing they would be required to do by law is if there was new evidence tendered that the Kennedy family themselves that were pushing an agenda through Texas. But other than that, they have no interest or no directive to pursue anything but to bring in evidence into the fold under the Assassination Records Review Board that existed at that time and then classify the material if that's what needs to be done.
Now, when you were during that process, did they ever seize all these documents and material and go through it all, or did they ever have possession of it?
The FBI had come in several times with Robert White and seized materials from him, and then they were reviewed and subsequently classified. Some of those materials included the Secret Service logs and information on the bubble top and seating arrangements for the original autopsy materials, things of that nature.
And that material was seized and never returned.
That's correct.
Okay, so it was classified as top secret and it wasn't returned back to you. Oh my God, this is fascinating stuff. Okay, but I want to go back again. I want to know, like, what I'm asking you about. Okay, obviously, Johnson was involved, and he brings in Nixon. Nixon's on his team. They're both. But the other succession of presidents, who was aware of what happened, and do we know? And which side did they take? Like Jimmy Carter, Reagan. I mean,
for an example, I think Carter actually wanted to bring this forward. And he did, from what I was told, push an agenda for this, and was told by the director of the CIA, which was George Bush at the time, that he didn't have a need to know and to stop following that line. Mr. Ford had testified through Congress, through the Warren Commission, and aligned himself with the position of a single shooter, which eliminated a conspiracy and eliminated the some of the concerns about going to a war with Russia. So he was rewarded as it went on going. Now, President Reagan was very interested in this material coming forward. He asked us both to pray about it and to do what we thought was right, but he felt the government had become the biggest problem that we have. And it was time that the American public be informed and be able to make these decisions ongoing.
Now, with Reagan, was his interest before or after the attempt on his life?
Reagan had an interest. I mean, what I'd been told, that he had debated Robert Kennedy. I don't know if it was 67 or 68. I can't remember now. But he said that Robert Kennedy was very concerned about the domestic issues and the domestic problems of corruption and other things that were going on. And these are the problems that we needed to address immediately. But Reagan had taken the position that it was the outside forces and the Russians were still the main concern. But he says that after I had been shot at and I went through that process, I realized that a lot of things that Bobby Kennedy said was correct, and that his position publicly had been wrong.
Now, where do you get that information from? Directly from Reagan, or this is someone told you this?
That came directly from Reagan, and
wow.
Through yeah.
Wow.
Now, like I say, Reagan had met. Yeah, President Reagan was very interested in this, and he was the one that's actually giving us a heads up that we were going to have to testify about these materials. That there was interested parties, and that they would, and they're not even sure what materials were in there. Nobody. These materials were locked down through Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy was the Attorney General of the United States. He understood the legal process. He was pushed very hard-handed by the Johnson administration and the FBI to turn over these materials, and there was infighting. There was definite infighting over this, and President Reagan had discussed that. So once these materials were secured by Robert Kennedy in a way that they couldn't grab hold of them or know what was going on, Robert Kennedy was using that information to gain more strength and more power and to continue on the process, but he didn't make it. So after the instructions were to Evelyn Lincoln and to Robert Bauch to keep these, that had been very instrumental in securing these things through the Secret Service, who was the ones that were collecting a lot of these things after the assassination, to lock these down, keep them secure, do not discuss it, keep the family safe. And obviously, if I didn't make it, the buck stops here. The family's not going to be able to continue. So, of course, Ted Kennedy did not step up, wasn't able to step up after that, and everything went silent.
And then off the air, we had mentioned something in '98 about what's his name, Clinton. Where did Clinton fall into this? Which side?
Well, President Clinton and his wife was President's credit. He personally stepped up, I think, 2 times, two different years to keep the arbitration. They had subpoena powers, and they had the ability to collect information on this from anybody or any source in the world. But of course, I think he ran into his own problems with the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and of course he had to defend himself on that. And so it's one of those situations where they're even when the House Select Committee did their investigation, the materials were not available to the House Select Committee. So if investigative body don't have the evidence, they can't review them independently. How is going to be a full picture for the American public?
Have you been contacted by any of the high-profile JFK researchers asking to coordinate with you?
Well, I've had amazing response from the book of federal judges that have got involved, and I had a contact by the professor about a week ago. I won't name a name, but in case he doesn't want to be mentioned, but his resume is so long I couldn't get through it, but he knows everybody, Maureen Oswald and all these different individuals by name, and knows everybody personally, and been involved in this for decades. And he's in his 70s now. And he said, I've read your book, and he says, in my personal opinion, I believe this is the best book ever written on this subject as far as President Kennedy is concerned and what happened. And I took that as a great compliment coming from him. But yes, I've had some interesting people contact me, and it's been I'm very pleased. Obviously, you write something like this, you don't know what's going to happen, but most sponsors have been overwhelmingly supportive. And very emotional. I've had some people actually cry. I apologized, and they said no. They welcomed it. They thanked closure on it. How do you deal with that? What do you say to that? It's not my. I went through this, but it's really not my story. It's really about everybody. It's really about all this information that should have been at some point aired. And I was able to share my part of it.